When we talk about triad inversions, we're concerned with the ordering and the position of notes within a triad. Let's go back to the G chord that we had in the previous video. So we have this G chord. We have our root, which is G. We have our third, which is B. And we have our fifth, which is D. So G, B, D. Root, third, fifth. Notice that the root of the chord is on the bottom. There are no, the root, remember, is G right here. There are no notes that we're playing that are below that G. So the root G is on the bottom. And when the root of a chord occupies the bottom position, we call this a root position chord. So root position chord, the root is on the bottom. But this is not the only way that we could order these three notes. And when we talk about triad inversions in particular, it's always most useful to think about which note is occupying the bottom position. So let's actually try to make another note occupy the bottom position of this triad. Now here are the rules. We want to make sure, since a G triad is G, B, and D, we want to make sure that we have a G, a B, and a D. So let's do this. Let's move this G that's on the bottom out of the way. Let's put that G up an octave here. And let's keep the other two notes where they are. So the B is right here, and the D is going to be right here. So now we have the same three notes, G, B, and D, but now in a different order. Now the B occupies the bottom position. So we have B, D, G. Just to hear the sound, by comparison, here was our root position chord. Here is the chord now with B on the bottom. Now here's where things get a little bit confusing. Remember these titles that we gave, these names that we gave to each of the notes in the chord. The G is the root, the B is the third, the D is the fifth. Those titles that we gave to those notes, those names that we gave to those notes, are not going away just because those notes have switched position. It's like if you're in a classroom, if you switch the chairs and the positions that you're in, you don't take on different names. You keep your name, and this is what is happening here. The three notes of this chord are going to retain their names. So the root of this chord is still going to be G, even though the root is now on the top of the chord. We still consider that G the root of the chord. The B is still considered to be the third, and the fifth is still the D. So another way to think of this chord is we've now rearranged these notes so the third of the chord is on the bottom. Instead of the root being on the bottom, the third of the chord is on the bottom. And we call this first inversion. Let's try to switch these notes around yet again. And since we have one version where we have the root on the bottom, another version where we have the third on the bottom, let's see if we can flip these notes around again so that we have the fifth on the bottom. And let's go about it the same way. Let's move this B up an octave and get it out of the way. I'm going to put the B all the way up here, this B above the ledger line, which is going to leave, and we'll leave the other two notes where they are. So that's going to leave now the D on the bottom and the G in the middle. So now we have D, G, B. But again, just because these notes have switched positions, they are not going to lose their titles. They're not going to lose their names. So, the G is still the root of the chord, even though it's positioned now in the middle of the triad. The B is still the third of the chord, and the D is still the fifth. Except now the fifth is on the bottom. When we position the chord so that the fifth is on the bottom, we now have what is called second inversion. Let's see if we can, since we've been flipping, let's see if we can flip one more time. And let's do the same thing that we've done. Let's take the bottom note, flip it up to the top. So here's the D. Let's put the D up. We're going to go way up here. Flip it up the octave here. And we'll keep the other two notes where they are. So the G is going to be here, and the B is going to be here. And notice what has happened. We now have the G on the bottom, which is the root, the B in the middle, which is the third, and the D on the top, which is the fifth. Look what we've done. We've constructed another root position triad. This is a root position triad that is one octave above the one that we started with, but we've now flipped ourselves back, so we're back where we started in a root position chord. And again, why is this a root position chord? Because the root is on the bottom. And again, it's the bottom note that is going to be our determining factor. So in a root position chord, the root is on the bottom. In a first inversion chord, the third of the chord is on the bottom. And in a second inversion chord, the fifth is on the bottom. If you always concentrate on the question of which note, root, third, or fifth is on the bottom, you will always get the inversion correct.